I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with my colleague Luca Giliberti, and we are here with the one and the only Emmy-winning Handmaid's Tale production designer, Elisabeth Williams. Um, First of all, Elizabeth, production on season 4, it shut down because of the pandemic. So we all know how devastating that was after a couple of weeks. But I'm sure several of the sets had already been built and locations had already been booked. So what was the greatest challenge with returning to work after a few months, this shutdown, and then creating an entire season of The Handmaid's Tale during a pandemic?
Well, actually, hi, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. So yes, we'd done our 3 months of prep, and we had just started. We'd done 2 weeks of shooting, and we were at the locations. If you've seen the show, of course, in episodes 1 and 2, the big farmhouse that we had, dressed and built in actually, and dressed, and we were ready for that entire block. So luckily enough, we got permission from the locations to leave most of what we had in place. So we didn't have to wrap everything, return it to our suppliers, and redress. So that was fantastic. But one of the important challenges is that the season changed between the time that we started shooting in February and the time at the end of February and when we came back to work in August. And I think our shoot date started at the end of September, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So basically 2 very different seasons in Canada, one being the end of winter and the other one being the end of the summer. So, I mean, for the art department, it wasn't that much of a change, but we did have to just review some of the ways that we had set up the outside, some of our colors, and because, against green and whatnot, I mean, for the obvious reasons. So that was our main challenge. The other challenge was, of course, that we had, fortunately and unfortunately, because we love Dana Reed, we changed directors. In the meantime, Dana Reed, who had started the show with us, was unable to come back because her children were in school and all those things. And so the change in directors who we knew, and that was great, but it came along with a whole bunch of new challenges and new ideas and new, so it was a busy time, very busy time.
Right. And in spite of the pandemic, though, we got to see so many new sets this season, between the farmhouse run by Mrs. Keys in the first 2 episodes that you already mentioned, the Jezebel's Mansion, the Gilead Detention Center, the Aunt's Common Room, a war-torn Chicago, you name it. Yeah. Which one was your favorite to explore and work on?
That's a really interesting question. I'd say that they are all so different that they're all interesting and hard and fun to work on. But obviously, Chicago comes up always and again as being the most, not challenging, but the most complete, let's say. I mean, it's such a, it kind of spans over 2 episodes. It's on a budget and in a time frame in a television series, that in itself has its challenges. And of course, to recreate a city of, I don't know, 3 million people, 6 million, I don't know how many million people are in Chicago, and in a town where there are 100,000 people, that has a series of challenges as well. So it was a big one. But it was really interesting. And we had, thanks to the pandemic, a lot of time to prep for that one, because it's a prep that we started before the break. And we were able to continue throughout the shooting of the episodes 1, 2, and 3. And so in the end, we benefited. It didn't make it easier, but it made it more, we were very thorough in our research, in our builds, in all those things.
And you already mentioned about the challenge of recreating practically an entire city. How do you decide when to create something by hand, for the lack of a better expression, and when to utilize or rely on visual effects? I mean, you obviously can't create a war-torn Chicago in its entirety by hand. So Correct. How do you decide which parts to create by hand and which ones not to?
Correct. Good question. And again, the fact that you asked the question is a testament to both our jobs in the art department and the jobs of Brendan and their team, because we have a general rule amongst ourselves that we've done this since the beginning on The Handmaid's Tale, since I've been there, is that everything below 10 feet from the ground is done by art department, everything. And then anything above 10 feet, unless, it's something that's really easy or quick to do, will be done by visual effects. So you can imagine that, for example, as June and Moira, or June and Janine, or June and Moira for that matters, are in the street. Everything that you can see that is, we've built or created or whatnot. And so of course, so that was the general rule. And I mean, that's pretty much what we did. I mean, of course, other than, the far backgrounds and all the matte paintings that go with that. So we did that this season. And also for whatever was close up to camera, the art department provided, so sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, all perfect.
Okay. I'm so sorry. Do we have to start over?
No,
don't worry about it.
We'll edit that little piece out and you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Just sorry. Okay, hold on. I'm just going to make sure this person doesn't call again, because I think they might.
It always happens. Every time, yeah, I know. It always happens to me as well.
Okay. Sorry.
No, not at all.
No worries. No worries.
Okay. So, yes, art department. So art department provided visual effects with the designs, the 3D models of the tops of the buildings on those main drags where June and Janine walk around. And so it was something that was thought of and controlled from the beginning. We took reference from various neighborhoods in Chicago. We had done a lot of very research, and we picked and chose the architectural elements that we thought would give that vibe as much as possible, and we provided them with the work, the artwork.
Wow. And this is very specific, but when Gilead bombs Chicago, were those mainly practical or visual effects, especially the windows of the surrounding buildings shattering into pieces?
So the large part of it was visual effects, but everything around the actual explosion was practical effect. So the glass that shatters close is all fake glass, practical effect. Yeah. Wow. And we have a great mechanical effects team. And so, the smoke, the dust, all of that was in camera. Yeah.
Before I move on to my question, the Chicago stuff is so confronting, because people, when you're watching the show, you have to realize this is Chicago and it looks like Aleppo. It looks it's so authentic. I mean, a lot of effort would have gone into that. And so congratulations on an amazing work there. The other thing that I really appreciated was the farmhouse, which we mentioned earlier, that Mrs. Keys runs. It's a different flair to the usual stuff that we would have seen in Gilead. So what was the inspiration around that?
Well, one of the things that we wanted to make clear is that we were no longer in the Boston Gilead that we knew. And so, they had already traveled far enough away. They were being hidden by Mayday. So this wasn't our usual space. And so and so we researched some fellowship farms, and of course the interior we completely built, and we took inspiration from some old English towns, and we pick and choose, and it enables, in my opinion, and it enables us to be kind of out of time, out of place. The story doesn't tell us exactly where we are in the United States, and sometimes, so as to not make a mistake about being authentic, it's a good idea to kind of pick and choose. And the other thing that we not struggled, but we thought a lot about was where or how does a commander live when he is in the countryside. We didn't want, there are a lot of in Toronto and in and around Toronto and North America, there are a lot of very beautiful mansions in the countryside, but we wanted to pull them away from that, and we wanted to have them in a country setting. And so we used that kind of old world aesthetic and brought it into the farm. I mean, that was the idea, to keep them in that, that kind of Renaissance world, but have them on a farm.
Right, that's so fascinating. And then after the first two episodes, the third episode is the one that most of us are still in therapy over, the crossing with the horrifying torture center, and June is relentlessly interrogated. There's some really effective fascist iconography in that episode, and the look and feel of Nazi Germany. That's what Luca and I got out of that one. Could you talk us through your inspirations for building that world from the very beginning?
Well, to be frank, the inspiration did come from the choice of that building, which is the University of Toronto, Scarborough, which is a brutalist architecture building. There are a lot of brutalist buildings in Eastern America and Canada, a lot in Canada, and we've been wanting to incorporate that in our story. And it's funny because we've every season now there have been episodes in which there's whatever it may be, the new Gilead headquarters. It's like, oh well, let's do it there. No, it doesn't quite feel right. And, so we've kept in mind for the last 3 seasons that I was there, we've kept this idea to shoot in one of these buildings, and finally the Gilead compound, and it felt so right, that we have this kind of CIA type, covert, violent Guantanamo Bay type thing, and it's time to use this architecture, which is so harsh and cold and threatening, this particular structure kind of looks like an armadillo. It looks like this huge tank if you Google it, but it's beautiful. And so everything else came from that. We took that exterior look and brought it through the entire show.
And in that episode, what really struck me was this room in which June and Commander Lawrence dine. How did you come up with the design for this room, especially the lights on the ceiling, which create such striking imagery?
Well, again, I mean, I could lie and say that it was all my idea, but I don't want to. It's one of those things, and I think it's always important for people to know that one of the jobs of the production designer, and then of course with the DP and the director, is to choose the location and to utilize within that location the spaces that work. And I, sometimes, of course, most of the time we adapt the spaces. Like, for example, in this one, we draped all the walls, but the lights were there, the ceiling is built, and that is, wow. So it is in the university. And so sometimes, there are a lot of other amazing spaces in the university that we could have chosen. And we just landed on that one. It was a common choice. I mean, it had that feeling of, as you were saying, talking about Germany, on how, the rich or the commanders lived in these exquisite, luscious environments, that were very, and so it gives them this stature and this power. And we felt that those lights were all about that. Just so it makes them look so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just to move away from Gilead for a second, a good chunk of this season also takes place in Canada, obviously. Yep. What is important to you when creating the look for Canada? Do you take Gilead into Canada, or the look of Gilead into Canada, when you're creating the living spaces for some of the Gileadian characters? I mean, we see Rita, for example, we see her apartment this season. So what goes into constructing those sets for that look?
Again, very, very interesting question. So yes and no. This season particularly, we did think about bringing Gilead into Canada. When June arrives, we thought, okay, what follows June? We talked about, with Stuart, we talked about the light. The light will follow June. And a certain kind of austerity, especially because a certain austerity, shall we say. But no, for the apartments, what we were hoping for Rita, for example, was to give her like a pure looking space, very empty. It's very hard, to be honest, in cinema television to deliver a set which is both good looking and empty. Do you know what I mean? Which gives a feeling of peace and well-being, but is stark. It's one of those things that we dance with a lot and hope that we succeed in, but that's kind of what we wanted for Rita. We wanted to pull her out of that. You know, she had been in the Waterford's house, which is very, you know, ornate and austere, and at the same time, we find her again in a kitchen, right? But she's, you know, doing the things that she knows to do that comfort her and that give her, you know, solace, but all in simplicity.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Austere is a really good word for a lot of the work that you've accomplished over the years. And speaking of, my favorite question now is about, because seeing as we're awards nuts, you are, you know, one of the most awarded production designers working at the moment. Let's be honest. Your work.
That's true.
It's true. You have won 3 Emmys in a row for June, Holly, and Household. And by the way, your work on Household, I could just still watch that. Just put it on my screen and just watch it. It's so beautiful. What was the most exciting? This is the key here. Was it, wow, I just won my first Emmy? Or the second, oh, this is a seal of approval. The first wasn't just a fluke. Or the third, we just can't quit you?
I think it was the third. It's one of those things, and I don't think, I mean, I'd have to talk to someone who's won a whole bunch of awards. I don't think it's something that you get used to or tired of. The first I shared with Mark White, so that was something different. I felt like the show as a whole deserved an award. We had submitted, that was an interesting one because I had submitted one, he had submitted one. We were both nominated. So I had those 2 nominations and then we won. So that, I mean, that was special. The second was a complete surprise and turn of events because it was for the same season. And so it was just like, hold on a minute, that's a little there, you know, someone must have made a mistake. And then the third, I thought, I said to my husband, like, you know, there's no way we're going to win this. You know, I mean, they must have moved on by now. People must have moved on. And I was so surprised. And so we've submitted again, of course, this year. And it's like, and now, you know, I'm thinking, no, they must be sick of us by now. And really now at this point they might. We'll see.
I don't know. You had so many, you had an opportunity with this the 4th season that Bruce has conjured up. The show's moving in a different direction, and so therefore you get to move along as well and create this whole new world again. How exciting. It's so exciting.
It's fantastic. It really, really is. I mean, I'm so lucky to be on this show. You know, every season I think, okay, well, every season now I'm going into my 5th because I've been invited back. So it's like, okay, I had to ask the question, should I move on? You know, is it enough? Is it good for my career to stay so long on a show? And I mean, it can be yes and it can be no. The one thing that is for me creatively, it's a good idea to stay because no season has been the same. I mean, no episode has been the same. And in every single, like last season, we did hundreds of sets, all more complicated and different. And, you know, so I feel that in terms of my creativity and my ability to grow, it's still a place for me to learn and to grow. So it's fantastic.
Well, we look forward to seeing more and more of your work. Congratulations on a strong season and good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.